and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Now, this episode is going to be very interesting, and I guess I'll use this time to reiterate a warning, I guess. I think I might include a warning even if I don't actually do the thing, just in case. Because I guess I'll get into it when I get into the actual topic, but basically when I wrote all this down prior to doing it, to get all my thoughts down on paper, I guess. Well, not even really paper, just on a pad, to keep it concise, prevent me from rambling, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And when doing so, there are a couple of times where certain words show up, and even though I don't necessarily, I put them in there because because I think at one point I was going to go a bit more broad and explain a little bit of history behind the terms, but at the end of the day, to prevent that from being a bit more disjointed, I think it's kind of avoided a lot. So even though I probably won't say it that much, if at all, in the actual script, because here's the thing, it's on the Patreon, uncensored version on Patreon, I guess. The uncensored script right there, you can see literally the 8 times the word is there. I think I might get into it a little bit before I get into the actual topic, but I'm rambling. This episode's already going to be pretty disjointed. One more thing I should mention about this episode. Due to the stories that I cover in this one is going to be a lot more very disjointed. Rather than focusing on the unofficial rule that I've essentially had, where I focus on foreign news first, then I focus on domestic news, instead we're going to be jumping all over the place. First, we're going to start off with literally just some small good news. Just small good news, because things are going to get bad a little bit later in the news stories, considering if you know, you know. So, first news story, good news story, Ernie Chambers files to run for Nebraska legislator. For those who don't know, Ernie Chambers is a long-standing Omaha politician who has run in the state legislature many times before. He is a very outspoken left-wing figure who is basically one of the most well-known, he's one of the most prevalent but lesser-known politicians out there. Many people actually credit Ernie Chambers with the reason why Nebraska still has a split ticket system, where they have that one electoral vote that keeps going to the Democrats. Ernie's been advocating for socialism and left-wing issues, black rights issues, and one of the ones that is very interesting for me is the fact that he's also been a very hard-focused anti-theist. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say he's anti-theist, but he's a huge atheist figure. In fact, you might know him because of the fact that Mr. Beat recently made an episode on Ernie Chambers, literally a little bit before Ernie Chambers filed for re-election. Mr. Beat made an episode about Ernie Chambers because Ernie Chambers is very well known for trying to get a Supreme Court case to sue God, because he argued, his case argued that because basically what happened was in Nebraska, many Republicans in Nebraska wanted to get rid of the ability for poor people to sue big people, prominent people, for the harms that they cause. So, in order to bring attention to this, he decided to pursue a lawsuit against God. And there was actually a try to get this thrown out by saying, God, you can't receive the mail because we don't know God's address. To which Ernie would respond with, doesn't God know everything? To which, yeah, doesn't he? Anyways, that's just some good news. Next one is also is half good news, half bad news. Mitch McConnell has decided to step down as Senate Republican leader in November. It's good in the sense that Mitch McConnell will no longer be the leader of the Republican Party, with many people even going so far as to think that maybe Mitch McConnell is signaling that he might be retiring from the Senate, period, come next term. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out, but I wouldn't be surprised either way. It's bad in the sense that everybody knows that the person who's going to replace Mitch McConnell is going to be significantly worse than him, especially if they are one of the newer, younger members of the Senate. like Tom Cotton, who has floated himself as a potential candidate in the race. But best course of action is to make the Senate Majority Leader neither Mitch McConnell nor whoever the Republicans choose, and instead make it Chuck Schumer or someone better, maybe Ernie as Senate Majority Leader. Ooh, big interesting thing. Speaking of interesting things, a prediction of mine came true. George Galloway swept the Rochdale by-election. He won by a fucking massive margin. This race completely changed everything in this by-election. Labour got like 4th or 5th. The Tories got 3rd. And the second was an independent candidate. Now, most people are pretty obvious about the fact that the reason why this happened is simply because massive protest against the policy of the British government in regards to Gaza. I mean, Galloway literally went so far as to say it's like, this is for Gaza, and even go as far as to some people saying that he is basically Gaza's representative in the British House of Commons, which many people were point out the fact like, wait, there's already a Palestinian in the House of Commons. It's because, I guess I have to just mention this again, because this is a thing apparently, this is the first time that people have heard of George Galloway, because a lot of people were posting things on Twitter that very much showed like, okay, you guys literally just found out about George Galloway today. Aside from the many people who have been openly praising George Galloway, because, again, they know nothing about George Galloway. But also, one tweet that I saw that was blowing up was like, wow, look, George Galloway has 2 different mailers for 2 different houses. One for white people and one for Muslims. When it's like, this has been George Galloway's shtick the whole time, running a campaign in one area completely different than him running a campaign in a different area of the region. Like, he would go to the Muslims and basically say, yeah, I'm so Muslim. And then he would go to all the white areas and then campaign on something completely different. Like, George Galloway, all he does is stoke, tensions between Muslims and another minority group in a region and uses that to coast himself into being popular. This is how fucking weird it is. He's done this, at least 3 times successfully, as far as I can tell. One was when he ran against Una King. Coincidentally, he was saying how Una King could not properly represent the Muslim district. Coincidentally, I should mention, Una King is Jewish. It's completely unrelated. No, completely unrelated. Then, the next time, he ran against a Muslim person and literally went, I am more Muslim than the Muslim in office. And George Galloway openly has just stated, he's basically just an anti-Semite. Whatever anything that people have been calling Jeremy Corbyn, he is just what the media paints Jeremy Corbyn as is what George Galloway is. But even worse, because for some reason, he's made it his whole grift now to target trans people. Now, one of his most recent elections was when he ran in another by-election where he tried to basically stoke Muslims to being extremely socially reactionary. It's like he basically ran on religiosity, religiously Islam, when back in the day he used to try and do things in regards to foreign policy. But now he does basically everything. He's fucking George Galloway is just a fucking absolute hypocrite troglodyte. You could make a whole episode about George Galloway's problems. And if anybody in the comments ever wants to see big proof, I can put a ton of things that explain why George Galloway is a terrible figure. But anyways, let's get off of that. And move on to a good figure. Aaron Bushnell. For those who have no clue who Aaron Bushnell is, let me explain. Aaron Bushnell was a member of the United States Air Force who was not necessarily prominent, but was very active online, particularly in left-wing circles, which is very odd because you would think that a person in the U.S. military would lean harder right, not harder left, but hey, Aaron Bushnell was based. And one of the accounts that he had was an account on Twitch. And on this Twitch account, Aaron Bushnell posted a stream. And in the stream, he was on his phone, and he was walking to the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. He was holding his phone and a water bottle, and he was talking about how he could no longer be complicit in the genocide in Gaza, believing that it was in the best interest for us and everybody involved to, end the Gaza genocide. And then, what he ended up doing next was he put his phone down, walked over to the gates of the Israeli embassy, camera pointed at him, he began to pour the liquid on his head, and then proceeded to light himself on fire, ultimately succumbing to his injuries. And in the short time that Aaron Bushnell has entered discourse, a lot of things have been going on. For starters, many people found his old accounts, started combing through his accounts to find out his takes on certain things, and I think we'll kind of get into a little bit of it in a bit, but it's not really that important. Otherwise, just know, active left-wing person online. That is the important part. Discourse was started on whether or not the uncensored footage should be released, because there's a prominent Twitter account that has posted a censored version of the video when the stream itself was uncensored. But the stream was of course taken down after Bushnell's account was deleted, because that's usually what happens whenever any of these kinds of things happen. Usually we see it when it's in regards to a mass shooting, but thankfully there was no mass shooting in this regard. But when a thing like this happens, the accounts are usually purged, basically to save their own image, because a lot of people will try to point to the websites like, oh, you see the websites, they're the reason why he did this. Apparently, there's a lot of discourses surrounding Aaron Bushnell, so why don't we just go bit by bit in regards to the discourses. First, let's start off with this discourse. Should the uncensored video be released? I am of the belief that the uncensored footage should be released, because that is clearly what Aaron Bushnell intended when he streamed the event. That is clearly what Bushnell intended. And also, in my personal preference, if I were to have died on camera, I want that footage, the uncensored footage, to be out there, available for the public to see. That's my personal preference. Not to make it all about me, but that's just me explaining my preference and why I sort of stand on one side. I also stand on that side because of the idea of I want media preservation to be around. I think if footage is brought to the public's eye, it shouldn't be then just stripped away from the public. Aaron Bushnell published the stream of his self-immolation, and the fact that we still have the footage of the self-immolation is good. But the fact that the footage is censored, many people would argue, kind of distracts from the narrative. I'm not necessarily of that belief system, necessarily, because the person also published a photo of his self-immolation, so that image is still out there. And then this leads to a discourse that I just figured out happened recently in regards to this, and it's the discourse regarding his family, because one of the things that I've seen other people who have argued that we shouldn't show uncensored footage is because Aaron Bushnell's family does not want the uncensored footage out there. I made the case that what if Aaron Bushnell's family was not supportive of his cause at all, and didn't want this footage out there, and didn't want anything regarding this incident out there at all? Well, it turns out I might have been allegedly right, because, allegedly, Aaron Bushnell's family has come out of the woodworks to talk about what has been going on with Aaron Bushnell. And there are a lot of things that we've learned about Aaron Bushnell's familial relationship. For starters, there was a suicide note or something regarding Bushnell's final words, and he apologized to his brother about what he was going to do. But he doesn't mention his parents in the note at all. And apparently, Bushnell has actually been very critical of his parents' religious belief system, arguing that he grew up in a Christian cult. But his parents are claiming that Bushnell, allegedly, because this is apparently coming from accounts that aren't necessarily trustworthy without a verifiable source, but allegedly his parents, or at least his mother, has stated, we do not support what Bushnell was doing, and they basically jumped on a narrative that has been going on a lot with Bushnell in this regard, in the sense that they say that he was brainwashed and that he wasn't in the right mental state in doing this. Because there's been one thing that has been going around a lot, is people arguing about the state of Aaron Bushnell's mental health. probably aided and abetted by that statement from Aaron Bushnell's mother. Now, let's get the very obvious thing out of the way. No fucking shit was Aaron Bushnell mentally ill. Like, genuinely. Like, wait, you're telling me the guy who decided to set himself on fire, literally one of the most painful ways to commit suicide, you're telling me this person isn't mentally stable? What? You could have fooled me. So what? So what if Aaron Bushnell was mentally ill? And, what does this mean? What you're saying when you say, Aaron Bushnell is mentally ill, what you're truly trying to say is that you're trying to diminish his, what he tried to do, what he was doing, the stance of what he did. I don't give a fuck if he was mentally ill or not. Bringing this up as some kind of point against what he did is just stupid. Literally, all you're doing is just saying, yeah, the dude was mentally ill. Okay, so I guess everything he did was just meant nothing now. Mentally ill people are people too. Mentally ill people can have political opinions and can express their political opinions how they want. And this is how Bushnell chose to express his views. If you're, even if you're not a Vosh fan, I would recommend watching Vosh's video on Aaron Bushnell, because Vosh actually goes a bit more in depth about, all of the reasons why, people are very squeamish to talk about Aaron Bushnell. A lot of people are very squeamish to talk about Aaron Bushnell, and he goes over all of the reasons why people are squeamish to talk about that. Despite the fact that, isn't it pretty obvious that most, if not all people on, BreadTube or LeftTube, don't, all of us have, some sort of disease or disorder in regards to our mental capacities? Most of us admit to, struggling with things like depression and stuff. Does that mean, oh, you have depression? I guess that means that all your things are meaningless now. It doesn't matter. You're mentally ill. No, it doesn't matter if, I guess I should just reiterate this, because I know I'm rambling. Aaron Bushnell's mental capacity, mental illness or otherwise, doesn't matter. What matters is the cause that he did. Because, here's the thing, Aaron Bushnell was, quote-unquote, mentally ill. Yeah, he could have done far fucking worse. You know that, right? We don't remember, all the fucking, crazy right-wing people that are mentally ill? Don't they usually just, mow down, fucking schools and, churches of black people? Bushnell could have done far worse, but he chose an act of self-sacrifice. So even in his so-called mentally ill state, he chose an act that would only be harmful to one person. And while, yes, I would have liked a scenario where Bushnell didn't feel like he needed to do that, but unfortunately, that's the thing. A lot of people felt like they really were in a position that Bushnell felt like he was in a position where he needed to do this. Again, regardless of a mental illness or otherwise, he made the decision. And here's another thing. Vosh talks about this a little bit in the video, and I think I might expand upon it. I'm either taking what he said or expanding upon it. Very simple, because I'm just going to go a bit more in depth. Okay. So, Bushnell, one of the reasons why people are very squeamish about Bushnell, Vosh states is one of the reasons why is because it was an American. It was a white guy. It was a person who lives in a place, Bushnell did not have to do this. I am pro-Palestinian. I didn't go to the Israeli assembly and then burn myself. I didn't do that at all. Bushnell, I don't know exactly his living situation, but he lives in one of the most prosperous nations in the world, so far removed from the actual genocide going on that he has no reason to do that. Some of us think Twitter activism is enough. Some of us think IRL activism is enough. Some of us think we need more direct action and other things. Some of us think voting for pro-Palestinian candidates is enough. Everybody advocates for Palestine and the pro-Palestinian side for various different reasons. And there are some people who go way further than what Bushnell has done. Again, Vosh goes about it a bit more in depth. He explains, if this happened in Palestine, if a Palestinian burned themselves, people would have been oh yeah, that obviously would have happened. Because they perceive Palestine as, in a much dire situation, which it is. People who are driven into worse situations, who really feel like they do have no other option. Palestinians, a lot of Palestinians and a lot of other people in these sort of revolutionary causes or whatever, They're literally just like, our options are either die and do nothing, or die and do something. And one reason why a lot of Vosh viewers got a bit like iffy in regards to this, first of all, there was like a stupid one, because like, I'll say this, if you watch the Vosh video, there's one part that gets really stupid, when Vosh fans like are completely brain dead and go like, Vosh, isn't it funny, isn't it interesting that Aaron Bushnell actually didn't like you? It's like, fuck off. That is completely irrelevant to what is going on. I don't give a fuck if Aaron Bushnell was pro. Like, I mean, imagine this story. If Aaron Bushnell was like, oh yeah, he really hated his YouTube channel, Pluribus Unum. Like, I wouldn't give a fuck. I wouldn't give a fuck if he was that. I would still be covering his story. And Vosh even tried to be like, look, dude, shut up. That's irrelevant. I don't care. But another reason why that makes him a bit squeamish is because Aaron Bushnell actively participated in a lot of the same lefty dramas that a lot of us have. Like, I got involved in, like, gave my takes on, like, the Professor Flowers and Vosh debate, and yet I'm still alive and he's not. Anyways, I've, like, been rambling. Let's just move on to the next story. R.I.P. to a legend, Aaron Bushnell. Hopefully your dream of scattering your ashes in Palestine comes true. Speaking of Palestine, let's talk a little bit about some good news. The Michigan Democratic primary. Big thing happened in the Michigan Democratic primary. As you know, there was a push in Michigan to have Uncommitted win delegates. Like, basically, there were a lot of people, particularly Arab and Muslim voters, and Arab and Muslim, like, leaders. Not all of them Arab and Muslim, like Andy Levin also endorsed the Uncommitted slate, who basically, to express disapproval of Joe Biden's stance in regards to Gaza, would then push for, like, to have voters cast their ballots for Uncommitted as opposed to casting them for Joe Biden or any of the other candidates on the ballot. And the results came in, and Uncommitted won 13% of the votes with 101,436 votes. With it slated that they will receive 2 delegates. And I have a very sneaking suspicion on who one of the people will probably be to represent the Uncommitted slate. Just a hunch. And there's been a lot of discourse on the Uncommitted vote, all of which are wrong and stupid. Basically, one of the biggest ones is that this is an irrelevant number because Uncommitted has won this much percentage of the vote last time or this time, which percentage is irrelevant. I'm talking about, like, the actual numbers. Like, the numbers are the important one. Like, the actual numbers of voters. And the number of people who voted Uncommitted this time around is massive compared to every other election. And this is showing, like, how big of a block Biden has. Like, this is literally just showing a fact. And this is another thing that it ties in the next point where some people are saying this is going to hurt Joe Biden in the general election. When it's like, it doesn't have to. Literally, here's what it's showing. It is showing that there's almost 102,000 voters that are saying, Joe Biden, listen, we did not vote for you in the primary. Do something, and we can get, and that number can go back in your coalition. This number can go right back in your coalition, your Democratic Party coalition. It can go right back. All you gotta do is do a little something for us. You know, stopping the genocide of people in Gaza, which is a correct thing to advocate for. Ending the Gaza genocide is good, and I want Joe Biden to end the policy in Gaza. Now, there's some people who might argue, like, wait, but, like, don't you advocate for people to vote for Joe Biden in the general election anyways? It's like, yes, I do. But I also believe in, again, ending the Gaza genocide, and by virtue, pushing Joe Biden further to the left. That is a good thing. I want Joe Biden to not just be Joe Biden. I want him to be better than who he actually is at the moment. Like, what's happening now is basically the part of, like, the fascist, like, Communist Party versus Social Democrats back in 30s Germany. This is basically what's going on. It's like, it's a two-way street. Biden, if you want us to do not the thing the KDP did, you need to start doing some things that the SPD didn't do. Ultimately, I don't necessarily know how much this is going to play in the general election because there's a good chance that if I had to say numbers, there's at least, I can guarantee, in my opinion, that at least 40% of these voters are going to lump back into the Democratic Party come November, not because of any good things that Joe Biden does, but purely because Donald Trump is going to say something that is like 10 times worse than anything Joe Biden has ever said, and, you know, we'll just move on from there. The remaining might be split evenly, I don't really know, I have to go bit by bit, but let's just move on to the main topic of this video. I was going to mention Marianne Williamson re-entering, but who cares? I think you guys are waiting a lot more for this main topic, so I think we'll just get into that instead. Okay, so first, let's just do a little bit of a reiterating of some things. The first thing you'll notice about this episode is that this one isn't really going to be talking a lot about, like, politics or, like, media or, like anything of that sort, like politics-oriented type stuff. Not really. This is a different type of one that I wanted to make. And with this, I'll also reiterate a warning that I kind of said at the beginning. You see, very much, I kind of intended for a certain word to be used a lot more. Like, not necessarily, like, really, like, oh, yes, I want to use this word so much, but, like, because there's a certain word, I'm still kind of dancing around it, there's a certain word that is in the English language that can sometimes be regarded as a synonym between, like, this, like, the main topic of this episode and, like, it can be regarded as a synonym of it. And it's a word that I've heard a lot in my time, not really necessarily used by me. It's not really a word that is particularly in my vocabulary. But I did at one point want to kind of go a bit more in depth about, like, sort of, like, the history of the word, a little bit about, like, why it's used in this context or whatever. But ultimately, I think that's kind of detracting from the actual point. It shows up a little bit in, like, the notes that I have put here, but not enough really to be of note. Maybe I might even just flat out just not say them at all. But the warnings are there in case I do end up saying it, just in case. Because I know that word is a little bit of a hot topic. And also, I should say this, nothing really definitive for me yet. I'm not a medical professional. I don't really know anything. I know as much as I have looked into this topic, but I'm currently not a doctor in this topic or like a expert in regards to this topic. So don't necessarily take all of this take this with like a little bit of a grain of salt. Like, I'm basically just giving you my experience and sort of my understanding of this topic. So I guess this is where we're going to start. And I think by this point, I guess I'll use this time to mention, like, to define the word in the title, if you don't know it. Neurodivergence. This, or like the singular version, neurodivergent. You see, neurodivergent is another way to look at people on the autism spectrum, because prior to recently, many people have viewed autism as like truly like a mental disorder, that you're normal or you're autistic. But people who have the analysis of neurodivergence are a little bit different in how they view it. Rather than viewing autism as like a necessarily a learning disability or like a learning disorder, they view people with autism as basically being on a different wavelength than people who are quote unquote neurotypical, you know, what people would consider normal. There's a little bit of a controversy about whether or not this is an appropriate term due to how diverse the autism spectrum is, with some people with autism being very different from other people with autism. One of the most common ways that people understand this is the quote-unquote high-functioning and low-functioning autism, which I learned is apparently not real. When I say not real, I mean it is apparently not like an actual like medical term, high-functioning autism or low-functioning autism. Basically, it's like both of these people have autism, but due to how they perceive the world, how they interact with the world, how they are, we can interpret if they are high-functioning or low-functioning. which makes no sense about like, wait, but yeah, it's an autism spectrum. Of course, wouldn't neurodivergence make the most sense to analyze it? Regardless, that is the definition of the term neurodivergent. Now, as you notice, the question in the title is, am I, like, it's going to be, like, I think, yeah, that's going to be the question of this episode. Am I neurodivergent? So basically, I'm asking, like, do I have autism or do I have, like, whatever? Which some people might be wondering, like, wait, why would you have to ask that? Well, that's what we're going to have to get into, like, my experience with autism or neurodivergence or whatever. Now, I had actually never heard the term autism until around, like, late middle school, early high school. Basically around the time that I was watching The Nostalgia Critic. Because there was an episode of the Nostalgia Critic show, like the top 11 second best fuck-ups, where he covered some screw-ups that he made in the course of his, like, channel. And the number one screw-up that he had made in that episode was that he made a really strange autism joke. Where there was a character, like it was in the review Ernest Saves Christmas, where there were children who were like laughing at a puppet show, and the Nostalgia Critic viewed them as a little too old to be enjoying a puppet show. So the Nostalgia Critic made a very interesting joke.
Yes, I think he entertains the autistic children.
A joke that was so poorly received that he ended up cutting the joke out of the episode because he just didn't feel right about it. Now, this episode will also cause a different controversy because he re-uploaded it to his original, like, his actual YouTube channel most recently, and and that joke was cut out, but he actually left in another joke.
What's up, my niggas?
But now he has since deleted that part. Side tangent aside, like, basically, that was the first time I had ever heard of the term autism. Outside of the occasional comment section where people would insult a creator for some reason and basically say, like, what are you, autistic? All I really knew was that it was a disability that some people would use as an insult. Similarly to how people would use, well, I guess there's just no other way to say it, like, similar to how people would say, like, what are you, retarded? Like, basically in that sort of vein, like, the insinuation is you are mentally deficient, that you have a disability, that you do not have learning comprehension or whatever. Basically a way to call someone stupid, but still have like a deeper cut. Because again, you're implying that they have a mental disability. I was a lot more familiar with people using the R word as a way to insult people, and I guess there's no other way to dance around it. Sometimes people in my schools would make fun of the people in the special ed classes by calling them the R word. So again, like, you understood that the terms had this different meaning, but that they are also used in this insulting context. So yeah, aside from that, I really didn't know much about autism. Because basically, due to the way that the words were used, I thought, like, oh, it would be obvious if someone had autism. Like, I mean, I knew some of the kids in the special ed classes, they acted different. They looked different. I understood, like, I didn't understand the specific, like, conditions they had. But I understood, it's really hard to describe without coming off as mean. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. I was never mean to any of the special ed kids, because that's, why would you be mean to a special ed kid? What? Side tangent again. A lot of kids in my school were mean to special ed kids because there was this one special ed kid in my class. I don't know what his specific condition was, but let's just like, say he was very much learning disabled. Like, he couldn't talk. He had his hands were in a specific way. The manner of speech that someone would use to insult a person with a mental handicap, that is the tone of voice that he had. I was like the one kid in the class that wasn't a dick to him. Like, the kid would be used as a fucking punishment by the other kids. But basically, again, that was my experience with sort of how that would work. Right? If autism was like the R word, and the people who were called the R word, at least quote unquote scientifically, if they were like that, then people with autism are like that, right? Then I got into high school and things started changing a lot. Where I met a friend, a person who I became really close to, who had autism. And if they had never told me, I would have never known. Like, I mean, sure, they had, like, certain quirks. Like, they were definitely, like, one of the quirky people. They were into a lot of, like, fandoms, hyperfixations. They were, like, really into, like, the late epic meme humor. But, I wouldn't have guessed that they had autism because that didn't seem, like, that weird. They could talk, they could make friends, they could interact with people, they could be in normal classes. Like, there was nothing that differentiated them from a quote-unquote normal kid. And, more likely than not, they were probably not the first friend of mine that was on the spectrum. Because back in grade school, I also had a friend who was weird. He was in my class as well, but he was very different from a lot of the other students. He was known as the weird kid. Like, one of the things that happened, like, I think this might be obvious in retrospect, but, like, one of the things that he was known for was he had to wear red headphones that were supplied by the school. He was frequently known for, like, talking in a strange manner of speech. Like, he would go from, like, a 0 to a 100 in, like, an instant. And one thing is that it was a very common occurrence for him to put on headphones or, like, cover his ears and then go into the corner and then start screaming. And me and this kid, we got along great. Even though it also led to a little bit of ostracization because I had, like, a friend who didn't like this kid. And, well, I was caught between this kid and this other kid. Because, again, I didn't understand why people were being such a dick to him. Man, look at me, standing up for people who have mental disabilities since fucking, I don't know, when was this? It had to be 4th grade, so, like, 2009 or something. Like, yeah, like, 2009. Stuff like that, and or my other friend with autism. And in retrospect, there are a lot of other friends that I had that might have had some traits of potentially being on the spectrum. But I'm not here to self-diagnose. I'm only here to point out the one that is pretty obvious in retrospect, and the one that was explicitly told to me. But those two one of those two should have probably been my first step to looking into stuff like autism. I mean, I guess technically the second one, like the friend in high school, because they were the only one who explicitly said they had autism. But I still didn't really look into it. I was just like, I mean, there was no point. I didn't really see there being that much of a point in me looking into autism, because it's just like, I mean, that's just a thing they are. It'd be the equivalent of looking into, like, pansexuality, because they were also that. Like, I mean, they would tell me things, and I would understand how it was, but otherwise I didn't really look into it myself. But one of the things that I did end up having me look into autism was, basically, I was very much into the animation community. I was very much interested in, like, the animation community. You know, a lot of prominent, like, animation creators, particularly ones like Mr. Enter and stuff. So one of the things that was very much praised in the animation community was the show Arthur. And one of the reasons why the show Arthur was portrayed in a very positive light was they had an episode where they had a character basically just point blank explain autism to everybody. Like, Arthur was the real show. Like, it taught kids, like, darker things. You know, like, it taught kids how to deal with, like, cancer and stuff. And in this episode, they taught kids about autism because there was a character that had autism. He acted weird, and there were, again, moments where he would get into a corner and, like, cover his ears and, like, scream. And the way they described autism was it's a very common way to explain autism to children who might not understand. And it might be useful to you if you don't understand it. And the way it was described to me there was basically, like, it was a little too abstract. because I think it should have been a bit more blunt in explaining what it actually is. But like, here's the abstract way they explained it. It's like, picture you are on an alien planet, and then everybody does things, and then you laugh at that thing they do, or you don't laugh at the joke that they tell. But to them, it makes complete sense, but you just don't get it. And it's basically how they describe autism. Might make a bit more sense when we actually get into like looking into the actual like textbook definition of autism and like symptoms and other stuff that can be associated with autism. But like, that was basically how it was described to me. So it's like, okay. And that's just what I took. I knew that it meant something more broad, but I didn't really, again, put together like explicitly like, okay, but what does this like mean in like the us, like outside of cartoon animals? What does this mean? And then I would then be propelled to start learning about autism when something happened. I took my driver's test at school. Like, I did my driver's ed, and like one of the teachers, like the driver's ed teacher, she acted like a bit weird with me. I was like, I didn't really understand why. But then what happened was, she and my mom would end up having a discussion for a bit, and then me and my mom would leave and we'd go like run errands or something. And then while we were in the store, my mom casually mentions that what her and the driver's ed instructor were talking about was the driver's ed instructor had asked my mom if I was autistic. And she was saying it like she felt like insulted by what she said. Like she was like, how could she say that? That's so weird. And I was confused. I was just like, huh? I mean, I was weird because, again, I didn't really understand what autism was. And then, casually, my mom drops a big bombshell on me and mentions that this isn't the first fucking teacher to have asked if I had autism. That all the way back in first grade, my mother was apparently asked if I had autism. And after that, I was like, okay, so I have to actually look into what autism is, because it's like, what am I doing that makes me come off as like this? What makes me come off as like? Because again, I still had this somewhat perception like that it was like this big distinct thing from like quote unquote normal people, and that's where we get into the actual literal definition of autism: a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. Which is a bit broad, but like they also, usually whenever you look up autism, usually it will come up with some form of like symptoms, something that helps you explain like, oh, so this is how I understand that if, like, because usually they try to do it like, if your child has autism, like that's usually one of the main reasons why people look into autism, like, oh, does my kid have it? And I think there was like one that like had like symptoms on Google, but like I the one that comes up now, I don't think is the one that I came up back then. So I just like to look over again, like basically I found like these are some of the most common symptoms that are associated with autism: finding it hard to understand what others are thinking or feeling, getting very anxious about social situations, finding it hard to make friends or preferring to be on your own, seeming blunt, rude, or not interested in others without meaning to, finding it hard to say how you feel, having the same routine every day and getting very anxious if it changes, avoiding eye contact, getting too close to other people, or getting very upset if someone touches you or gets close to you, sensitivity to sensory input, having a very keen interest in certain subjects or activities known as hyperfixations. And the thing is, as I read the symptoms of autism back then, like, not only I learned a couple of things. For starters, I learned, wait, this is it? Like, I mean, because with all the buildup, like, oh, people were using autism as like this like big thing, like, oh yeah, you're autistic, you're a loser. It's like people would call like that was like the biggest insult on the internet at the time, calling someone autistic. I mean, parents get like fucking like crazy, like, oh, the vaccines are giving them a kill. like when they're doing that, it's just like, it makes it seem like, oh, autism is like this big thing, but it's like, wait, this is it? You're basically just describing a shy person. Like, it's basically, like, to me, that is what it seems like. I understand there's a lot more to it. Like, of course, again, with the autism, it's an autism spectrum disorder. There are some people who, when those symptoms come out, it basically just means like, nothing really changed. They might get like a little antsy or whatever. Then there are some people, if you touch them in the wrong way, they'll scream at the top of their lungs and then run as far away as they can. Again, it's autism spectrum disorder for a reason. And another thing that I learned is that while reading the symptoms, I was like, wait. Because a lot of those symptoms, they started lining up basically with my life. Okay, so first, social anxiety / trouble making friends, introverted, like, yeah, 100%, lol. Like, that's just me. That's just me. Like, but do you know how many friends I fucking have? Like, none. I have none. And in school, you want to know how I made friends? Like, this is how I made friends in fucking school. Okay, so, elementary school, you were just friends with everybody in the fucking class. That was just how it worked. Middle school, like, I basically just became friends with the fucking, like, kids that I sat next to, and it's just like, hey, do you watch this show? It's like, okay, yeah, I watch the show too. I guess we're friends now. And then in high school, when friendships become, like, fucking, like, big things, like, what ended up happening is that I basically just, what ended up happening is that I basically just daisy chained myself to my sister for, like, the first year of high school, because, like, she was a senior and I was a freshman. And then, when she left, I basically just, like, forced myself as a tumor into her friend group. It's like, okay, now I'm here too. I'm here now. And usually when I'm in the group, I usually kept myself. I didn't really say much at all, if anything. I liked being in the group, but, like, when the group's too big, it's like, But I like the idea of having, like, a small group of people to be around. But, like, and there are many moments where it's just, like, it's like literally, I'll be sitting, like, this is literally a common interaction I had in high school, where it's basically, like, I sit down, and there's a kid next to me, and they're talking about this thing that I'm very interested in. And normal people, typically, when you see that, you would try to, like, maybe try to introduce yourself to get into the conversation. Me, I sat there and did nothing. Like, I mean, for the fucking last year of high school, I had, like, literally no friends, because all my friends had graduated, so, and it was, like, too late to make new friends, so it's just like, bitch, I'm so fucking introverted and, like, social anxiety or whatever. I was too nervous to fucking reschedule my dentist appointment, and the only way it got rescheduled was because the dentist fucking called me and then said, hey, are you still for this appointment, or do we have to reschedule? Wow. Trouble understanding what people want with me? Remember the person with autism that I mentioned before? The one I mentioned that I became friends with in high school? Well, there was a very, like, well, actually, this is a little, I guess I have to talk about this. Romance and love. Because there were multiple girls that apparently had crushes on me at various points, and I just never noticed. Now, I know that it's, like, not, again, like, this isn't necessarily, like, oh, I did this, therefore I have autism or whatever, but, like, I'm just explaining my experiences based on, like, the symptoms. Okay, so, like, first there was, like, this kid in, like, fucking, like, elementary school, but that's, like, different because, like, fucking, like, elementary school crushes mean nothing. But this person with autism, like, this one was very fucking different, because in retrospect now, here's what happened. They were fucking flirting with me non-fucking-stop, like, non-stop. Literally fucking blatantly, like, just obvious that they were flirting with me the entirety of the time we were in high school together. And I literally never fucking noticed until they graduated and had already lost interest in me, because they just flat out told me, like, oh yeah, by the way, do you remember, like, when I had a massive crush on you? It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, I had this, like, massive fucking crush on you. This, like, and you didn't make a movie. I was like, what the fuck do you mean I didn't make a movie? I didn't know you had a crush on me. You're hot. You're hot and I'm not. And I mean, it's a little embarrassing in retrospect to admit, because, like, I'll just say it. This is how you, like, I mean, I think some of you after hearing this are going to be like, yep, we answered the question of the thumbnail, we answered the question of the title. they explicitly offered to suck my dick, literally, and offered and just said casually, like, yeah, I could send you nudes, whatever. And I didn't pick up the fact that they had a crush on me. Remember the driving test? Well, at one point during the test, they texted me and they told me, I mentioned, like, the fact that I find it very difficult for, like, friends to casually have sex. And she's just like, no, I think if me and a friend were very close, like you and me, you know, I'd casually, like, probably have sex with them, whatever. I wonder, did this person have a crush on me? Or am I just reading a bit too deep into it? Am I reading a little bit between the lines? And I laugh at this in retrospect, but in all honesty, that kind of fucked me up a lot. Because my brain is now perceived like that's how friends talk to each other. Like, that's how my brain perceived it. Like, that's how friends talk to each other. So, like, then sometimes I'll try to have, like, actual other friends, and then I'll get into, like, categories like that, and it's like, you can't talk like that with friends. And then I'll get into, like, other friendships, and they'll also have, like, similar loose lines. And then it's like, oh, does this person like me? Because, like, the last person that had this kind of, like, line with me, they liked me. And now when I get a lot of female friends, I'll casually flirt with them a lot. And, like, the sad thing is, like, I mentioned this before in a previous episode. Like that's why I made, like, the fucking, like, guide to love on bread tube, where it's like, explicitly say no, like, explicitly say stop flirting with me, or if you do not want people to pursue you, like, explicitly say no, explicitly hold up the red sign and go, that is as far as you go, buckaroo. Because a lot of people, especially on the spectrum, and maybe me, I mean, depending on if I count on the spectrum or not, or whatever, like, they're not gonna see yellow, they're gonna see green or red. You gotta pick which one. Like, I don't like fucking, like subtly hinting your attention. Like, why can't you just be fucking honest? Just be honest with me. Why do I have to do this fucking song and dance? Why can't you just be like, I like you, you like me, let's do something about it. And I also take this piece of advice actually with some heart. Okay, so this is the piece of advice I take it to heart. So, you may remember there's this YouTuber named Jane Animations, and they made a video about flirting, and they made a point in that video that they have explicitly denounced. Where they make a point where it's like, if you're, like, sexually or romantically interested in someone, I don't think they explicitly said sexually, but, like, if you're interested in someone in a relationship, I don't see why, like, and they reject you, I don't see why you can't just continue being friends. Now, I am of that mentality. I believe that 100%. But the thing is, they've denounced that position, and they said the reason why is because they didn't understand how romance works because they are error ace. Now, I am the exact opposite of error ace, but I genuinely take it to heart because, like, I just don't see why that can't be a thing. And it's like, apparently normal people don't see it that way because it's, like, extremely common for people to be friends, and then when one of them says, hey, I kind of like you in, like, a romantic way, they go, sorry, no, I'm not interested. And since that, now you can no longer hang out and be friends anymore. I mean, I'll still be your friend if you, like, turn me down. I'll be, like, mad. I might be, like, sad, but I'll get over it. And one thing that has happened recently that has kind of, like, helped solidify this is not really in regards to, like, romance or whatever. That was a big tangent. But it is regarding online arguments. Like, we see this happen a lot, where you get in an argument with someone, and then you'll say something, and then they'll greatly misinterpret what you said. Or, they'll say something, you respond to it, and then they'll say, no, you're greatly misinterpreting what I'm saying. And this is the example that I came to recently. I posted a thing where I was critical of the new X-Men show, X-Men 97. I wasn't critical of the show itself because I have not seen it. I was critical of the concept of the show in general. Explaining like it was a bad idea because it was like, it's just another example of a conglomerate rehashing an old property to, like, garner, like, fans. And there was this one person who came to the defense of Marvel and the X-Men show. And I was very critical of them expressing approval of what Marvel was doing with their IP. And they kept telling me over and over and over again that that was not what they were saying. But then I read their text over and over and over again. It's like, there is literally no other way I can interpret this argument. There is genuinely not a single other way I can interpret you saying that X-Men 97 is a good idea to not be a defense of me being critical of Marvel saying that this is not a good idea. Like, I genuinely don't understand, like, wait, how does this... And then a lot of other online arguments where it's like, they'll say something, and I'll say it, something, and then they'll respond with something completely unrelated or whatever. It's like, what if maybe that's because we all just are... What if that's... Because I know neurodivergence is way more common online. What if people are not just intentionally lying? What if they're genuinely, like, we don't understand what you're saying? Okay, next one. Seeming blunt and rude or not interested in others without meaning to. Bluntness varies, considering I'm also a relatively shy and introverted person. But in areas where I am somewhat anonymous, like YouTube, Twitter, fuck yeah, absolutely. Have you seen this show? I'm very fucking blunt. And there have been multiple times where I will, like, talk with someone, like a family member usually, because, like, I don't have friends, but, like, I will say something, and then I'll be told that I'm rude or I have an attitude, when I'm just like, wait, what? I'm literally just talking. Like, I literally don't know what you're talking about. I'm literally just talking. Like, I just said words. Why am I getting yelled at for having an attitude? And what is going on? An example comes from that friend with autism again. So, that friend, they invited me to hang out with a bunch of their other friends. And I was like, okay, I mean, I didn't like the fact that I wasn't going to know that many people there, because I didn't know any of the people there, aside from the friend. So, I was like, okay. But, like, you know, I was like, I wanted to get out of my shell. I wanted to, like, talk to more people or whatever. And I did. I interacted with a lot of the people, you know, I joked with them, I was like, yeah, happy, wonderful, haha. And then I'm like, wow. Like, when I got home, after hanging out with them, I'm like, wow, this is like, you know, I'm really proud of myself for what I did. And then, we're gonna hang out again next week, and then I text them, like, saying, like, hey, what time we're gonna, like, hang? And then they responded with, like, the friend with autism said, hey, apparently, they don't want you hanging around with them anymore, because you were rude, you were mean, and whatever. And I'm just like, what? Like, I mean, I could just be, I could have been just fucking gaslit that time, but I genuinely just like, what? I genuinely don't understand, like, how anything that I did that day could be interpreted as rude. The closest thing, maybe, is, like, that I didn't talk as much, that I, like, sometimes, like, sat away from the rest of the group, sometimes, but it's like, it's not rude. I just didn't want to, like, sit really close to other people, I guess. I don't know. Finding it hard to say how you feel. Have you fucking listened to my early podcasts? Have you listened to my current podcasts? Getting too close to other people. That depends on what you mean. Like, do they mean physically or emotionally? Because physically, not necessarily. Maybe a little bit, but not really. If they mean emotionally, yeah. Like, I keep mentioning that friendship before. Like, when I was in that friendship, I was in that fucking friendship. Like, whenever they had a problem, I was there. And I usually do that with a lot of friends. Like, whenever they have a problem, I almost immediately, like jump off of everything I do, and I go to them. Like, I try to be like, hey, you know, you alright, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Whenever someone texts me, I usually immediately respond in friendship circles or whatever. Like, I guess for lack of a better term, the friends become a hyperfixation. Although that could just be because I'm so, like touch starved, so, like, attention starved, so, like, everything starved aside from food, that basically anybody who even shows me any remote semblance of, like, caring who I am, I basically just jump all in. Guess this is why I was able to be easily groomed by the G-Hive. It's like, wow, these people talk to me and interact with me? Oh, wow, I'm so important. It's like, bitch, nuh-uh. Because then you learn the truth. Nobody cares about you. Avoiding eye contact? This one I don't know, because I haven't really thought about it a lot. But I think it is true in retrospect that I don't really look at people's eyes. I think I look at people's faces and look at the general direction of them, but I don't think I actually, like, have looked that much into people's eyes. I think it's actually true. Like, I think usually, like, I look past people. I think I do. Like, I mean, like, I look at, like, where you're, like, I mean, picture you and me are standing next to each other. I'll look at, like, your cheek or your ear, so my face is pointed in your general direction, but not in a way that it looks like I'm, like, directly staring at you. Getting very upset if someone touches you, that really depends, I guess, consent otherwise. There was one thing that, again, I don't know necessarily if this is, like, a sign or whatever, but, like, when I heard, like, this thing, it's like, this reminds me of this thing. So, when I was younger, my father always did this thing where he would, like, to be affectionate, he would, like, grab me and be like, yeah! Like, he would, like, put me in, like, a neck hold. It wasn't, like, he wasn't, like, choking me. No, that's not true. But, like, you know, put it in, like, a thing where it's, like, you know, put you in a close bind. And usually what I did was I would, like, duck my head, like, so that his arm would, like, not touch me, because I didn't really like that. Though it's, like, I mean, I don't think a lot of people would like to have an arm around the neck, but, like, you know. The next one, very obvious. Hyperfixations. Yes, 100%. But you know what you're fucking on? You're on one of the hyperfixations. And when I'm in a fan base, I am 110% in. I mean, I rarely do see myself as, like, a casual fan of things anymore. Really, I don't. I'm usually, like, all in, or I'm not all in. Even in ones that it's like, wait, I think I am technically a casual, but I just go, like, nope, I'm 110% in now. Like fucking Korra. I haven't watched all the episodes of Legend of Korra or Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I consider myself a diehard fan of both of those shows. And that's where we're going to get into a little bit of tangents for that. Okay, so some of the fandoms that I have hyperfixations on have reputations. Now, I know this can sort of rely on a little bit of stereotypes, but, like, these shows and things that I'm going to list have reputations of having, I guess for lack of a term, autistic fan bases. And, alright, here we go. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, very well known that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is, like, very prominent in regards to, like, helping people with autism. Which I guess I ended up becoming, like, a somewhat fan of recently. Not even, like, really, like, a fan of the show, but, like, I like the concept and the idea. Like, basically, like, Fred Rogers is, like, a pretty cool guy. Steven Universe is a show I'm very much a fan of. Very well known for its quote-unquote autistic fan base. Rick and Morty, The Nostalgia Critic, Mr. Enter himself being an autistic creator, Asperger's syndrome, Five Nights at Freddy's, and Sonic the Hedgehog, of course, fucking Sonic, Sonic. And I mean, there are a lot of other things, because it also could just be because there are more people with autism than we realize, but, like, yeah, a lot of the things I do end up getting into sometimes have, like code, like, not coding, but, like, are seen as quote-unquote hotbeds of autism, and it didn't matter to me, I mean, because it's, like, these are the shows I like, and whatever. Again, I know that section relies a lot on stereotypes, but, like, you know, just a thing to note. Alright, so next thing about the hyperfixations, whenever I get into a fandom, there is a decent number of times where when I watch a show, movie, or whatever, one of my favorite characters will usually end up being the autism-coded character. Here's some examples. Dumbing of Age is a webcomic that I read, by David Willis, which remixes some characters that he has had in his arsenal for a long period of time, but puts them in a college, like a community college, like not a community college, but like an actual, like, university, and they go on, like, college adventures. One of the characters in the comic is a character by the name of Dina. Dina is, I don't think it's explicitly stated, but she is a very blatantly autistic character written by accident by the creator. which is a common thing in the media, where a creator will write a character, and then the character will be interpreted by the fans as being neurodivergent. And then the creator will go, wait, I didn't write this character to represent autism. I wrote this character to represent me. Then it's like, wait. Then it turns out the creator might in fact have autism. Another prime example that you might be familiar with is Community, with the interesting story of Abed and Dan Harmon. Steven Universe, one of the shows that is apparently an autism hotbed, my favorite gem in the show is Peridot. Peridot is a very heavily autistic coded character, and she's my absolute favorite gem. Like, the fandom basically concluded that she had autism long before the show's creator dropped a bombshell that every single gem in the show was technically on the spectrum, because they are literally, in the most literal sense, like literally they're like the fucking Arthur thing, where it's like aliens land on Earth. Spoiler alerts for Steven Universe. And one that is actually very interesting is weird. Like, this is weird because I just learned this recently because I was looking up like characters with autism, and I saw that the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy had a character with autism. And I'm like, wait, what? They had a character with autism? When? And it turns out that according to Maxwell Adams, who himself is autistic, all three of the main characters are on the spectrum, because he explains like he put his own personal experiences into those characters. And sure enough, if they are on the spectrum, like if he's on the spectrum and he uses his experiences to represent through these characters, then by virtue, aren't they also are on the spectrum. Plus he's the creator. He can literally do whatever the heck he wants. The last one comes from Time Ranger. So in Time Ranger, it's the Super Sentai version of Power Rangers Time Force. In the show, the Green Ranger is Sion. Sion is an alien from the future. And that's not where it ends. Apparently, in the show, like, here's the show's canon. Like, during the show, he, like, is revealed to have been kept in a lab for basically his entire life and experimented on. And due to that, he has a very skewed perspective on how people are. And he acts very weird. And it wasn't until they explained this backstory, and then when they were explaining this backstory, I screamed at the top of my lungs, holy shit, he's autistic! It's like, yeah, that like, he doesn't understand anything. Like, he doesn't understand social cues. Like, there were many times where he does social things that just, like, don't make any sense, but, like, he was quote-unquote weird, but he was nice, he was a good person, and I liked him. He's my favorite character. Pay attention to the characters that you, like. Pay attention to them, because you'll learn something about yourself when you keep looking at them. And another thing about the hyperfixations, yes, I'm focusing a lot on the hyperfixations because, I mean, there's a lot of things to do. Because this is one part that is just like, this might, I'm just, again, giving you my experiences, so, okay. Like, some hyperfixations make sense, you know. For example, I guess you could technically say Star Wars is a hyperfixation of mine. Like, I watched all the Skywalker saga. I watched the Star Wars The Clone Wars show when it came out. I've been watching a lot of the shows, like, when they come out on Disney Plus. But I don't watch a lot of Disney Plus, wink, wink. Those make, like, that makes sense. Like, if you were to say that's my hyperfixation, that would make sense, right? Yeah, well, there's some times where I'll have a hyperfixation that doesn't make any sense, really. Okay, so first, my hyperfixation on FNAF. I have watched the Matt Pat videos, played FNAF 3 for like a week, watched a infamous FNAF YouTuber, Smike, and watched the FNAF movie. And yet I consider myself a diehard FNAF fan that knows basically all the lore behind the scenes, etc., etc. And it all stemmed from that one fucking game theory video. Okay, so I also think I got obsessed with the Owl House before I saw a single fucking episode of the show, because it was in my, like, Instagram feed a lot, because it was a hot button show due to LGBTQ representation. That's another thing I was interested in. Like, why do I keep watching all these shows with a lot of gay representation? Okay, here's one. I'm obsessed with the lore behind the scenes, story beats, and themes of the television show Breaking Bad. Do you know how many episodes of Breaking Bad I've seen? Not a one. I love the song Loser Baby from Hazbin Hotel. I have absolutely zero intention of watching the show at all. And this is one that I just, I realized, I'm like, oh, this is like big, interesting. Okay, so when Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, I was obsessed with Indiana Jones. My birthday that year had an Indiana Jones theme. I got a ton of Indiana Jones action figures, Legos, the whip, everything. I was really in on fucking Indiana Jones. That was the year of Indiana Jones for some reason. I still haven't seen that fucking movie. I didn't see it in theaters because I didn't think of asking people to see it in theaters. I never went to get it in Redbox or something. And I haven't the first Indiana Jones film that I did see, it was randomly airing on TV, and I was like, oh cool, Indiana Jones, and I watched that. Sensitivity to sensory input. Loud noises bug me, even though it apparently doesn't bug anybody else in my family. Okay, so first of all, here's one. Party blowers. I can't fucking stand party blowers. And this has led to multiple incidents, because even though I will politely say, mother, family, I don't like party blowers. I don't know why, but they do not, I don't like them. So, could you perhaps, please, out of the kindness of your hearts, and I would assume love for me, to perhaps not buy party blowers. And or if you were to buy party blowers, you could maybe buy the ones that don't make very loud blaring noises. And then, when I say don't buy party blowers and don't make loud noise with them, what they hear is, what? Buy all the party blowers as many as you can? And then go up directly behind you, directly in your ear, and go, and then when they do that, I get mad and yell at them, and don't want to be around them, and then they're like, what are you going away for, dude? What's the matter? And there's another one that's really weird. Radio and TV volume. Literally, it's just literally, I'll just be happy, happy, whatever, just sitting down in the car, minding my own business, whatever. And then, the radio's on, 15, whatever. Whatever. It's fine. And then you put it on 16, and all of a sudden it's fuck, what the fuck? That's so loud. And it happens all the time. Literally, it'll be the TV will be on fucking 29, which I don't know why anybody would have the TV on 29 a lot. My TV, that's what I'll get into in a bit. But they put the TV and stuff that's that loud. I'm like, hey, that's really loud for me. And they're like, what do you mean? You're the furthest away from the TV. It's sure, I'm the furthest away from the TV, but it's still loud. So then I cover it. And to be fair, you wouldn't even necessarily understand. To be fair, it's not necessarily that uncommon, because for some reason everybody else in the family decides to be fucking loud as shit for no reason. But then it's just okay. This is one probably isn't anything but fork on plate, whatever. It was a thing that drove me insane. That's why we have plastic. No, I don't think it's why we have that. I think it's just because less dishes, but And another, the one that I mentioned before, inputs. Everyone else's inputs are so fucking loud. Meanwhile, none of my inputs are even remotely loud. And here's the example of how I knew this is something weird. Because I was listening to YouTube when I was in high school, and then someone was like, hey, I want to watch that video. I was like, okay, and then I gave them the other headphone, because that's what you did. And then they're like, turn it up. And then they turned it up literally the loudest setting it could be. And I was just I honestly don't understand. How could you listen to this? My TV is on fucking 5 or 6. It ranges from sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 6. It's but usually 6, 7, or maybe 5. But again, they're not high inputs at all. Because having that noise that loud for a long period of time, it bothers me. Also, here's some other things that they're not necessarily symptoms of autism, apparently, but apparently these are things that, like, it's like, sometimes they're included on lists of symptoms of autism, sometimes they're not, but it's like, they could also be symptoms of other things, but, you know, talking about neurodivergence here, you know, might as well get all of it out of the way. Okay, so first, humor. There are a lot of things that others find, like, just absolutely fucking hilarious that I'm just sitting there just like, what? Like, literally, this is a common occurrence, especially nowadays, where people in my family and, like, people in, like in the, like, families, like, friends or whatever, they'll be in a conversation, and then they'll just randomly, like, burst out laughing, literally in the, like a fucking hyena. Like, literally, they'll be, like, hyena laughing, and I'm just like, what is going on? Sometimes it's just because it's an old people joke, but then sometimes it's just, like, they'll say something, and then everybody will laugh, and I'm just like, I'm just the only one that's just like, what is going on? Back in the olden days, back when YouTube was kind of, like, still in its somewhat early days, there would be, like, it would be a common occurrence in the house to, like, sometimes get together and then watch, like, a funny YouTube compilation. And I didn't really laugh at any of them, really. I always won the challenges because it's just, like, I didn't think a lot of the videos were funny. I mean, most of them were just, like, pratfalls and, like, people, like, tripping and stuff. I just didn't find that funny because it's, like, that person, like, broke their leg. What's so funny about it? And this one, media example, maybe just an excuse to, like, shit on this, Beavis and Butthead. Like, I'll go and see a clip of Beavis and Butthead that's recommended to me. I'll click it. I'll watch it. And then every single fucking comment is literally just like, oh, this is such the pinnacle of comedy. This is, like, the greatest thing. Like, they can't make shows like this. Like, I'll watch a reboot clip and it's like, ah, just like the old show. The magic hasn't died. Wow, amazing, wonderful. And it's just like, what's the joke? I don't know what's the joke. It is literally, like, I mean, I guess the joke literally is just, like, they're stupid. That's the joke? I mean, I don't like that. That's not funny. I don't think, it's just stupid to me. Here's one that might be familiar to some people. Stimming. I apparently have done a lot of stimming. Like, I looked up stimming, what is stimming, and then it's like, oh yeah, sometimes I do that. Depending on what that means in some sense. Because I think it's like, because some stimming is like, you know, this is the classic stimmings I do is like bouncing knee at the desk, flapping my hands when I'm excited, moving foot when resting on bed, moving my hand side. Like, whenever I was in class, one thing I was very common is, like, I could not stand still for the life of me. Like, I would, like, stand in the line, and then I would, like, move the hands side to side, and apparently some people are like, oh, that's a symptom of autism. My handwriting has been politely described as absolute garbage. Maybe that is, sometimes the people say that's a symptom, I don't know. I apparently had issues walking growing up. I had been told when I was younger that I frequently stood on my toes and walked on my toes. And sure enough, I looked up, walking on toes child. It's like, that's a symptom of autism. Attention issues. In school, especially elementary school, I could barely fucking pay attention. I literally played with my crayons as if they were toys during lectures. And my first grade teacher at one point literally let me do it. Where they literally were just like, hey, like, you play with your crayons. And then she was saying something to the class, and then I realized, wait, she was probably trying to tell them that I have autism or whatever. As I got older, it got better, but it's like, I still sometimes have trouble. Like, even on this channel, I have problems focusing. When I record, it's very common. Like, I mean, have you seen this show? Have you seen this thing? I've rambled. I've, like, tried to get my train of thought. I'll, like, literally stop and then, like, go around, like, think it over and then go back. I'll write a vid, get distracted by, like, a random tangent and then do research. When I write edit, sometimes I'll just lose the creative juices and then just stop. Like, that was literally part of my writing process. I write till the juices stop and then I just do something else. Like, I mean, and even now, I've been having this problem with this, just focusing on this big project that I've been working on. Like, it's really hard to focus. I gotta buckle down to do it right. And it's gonna be hard because I gotta work on, like, fucking multiple things at once now, which is gonna be worse for my attention span. Apparently, people with autism are 4 times more likely to be depressed. Next question. In the past, I've been told I repeat things over and over again. And even during this, I've repeated things over and over again. I think I, like, deleted parts of it, but, like, if you go back, I can redo it. I say like a lot, I sometimes... But that's not what they mean. Like, in the past, I have been told, like, I will repeat the same stories over and over and over again. Here's one that's very interesting. I wash my hands a lot. Not only, like, you know, after you use the bathroom or, like, when you're preparing to eat, but literally just sometimes I'll watch them to wash them. I don't know if that's a symptom of something. I looked it up and it's like, apparently, they're like, maybe. Apparently, like, here's another one. Autism keeps coming to me. As I mentioned before, I've gotten a lot of, like, friends with autism, and even ones on, like, Twitter and stuff. A lot of people who had autism, or have autism, magically come towards me. So it's like, same reason why it's like, why will these gay people keep surrounding me? I think there's something up. I was rather late on doing some things growing up. I was a little late to the game to stop watching PBS Kids. I was a little late to the game to stop believing in Santa. I was a little too late to stop playing with toys. I was a little too late to sign up for driver's ed. I was a little too late to get a real job. Was haha funny. Next, like, and this is one that I noticed, like, especially now in retrospect with video calls, when I ever would do, like, a collaboration or whatever, I really wouldn't know how to handle a fucking conversation like a normal person. Example, someone could be talking for a while and I'm just sitting there just like, whatever. And I think in my head, just like, man, I haven't talked in a while. I should say something. And I'll say something, like usually like they'll reach a point where I can make like a witty remark. And then it's just like, haha, funny. Anyways, and then it's just like, yes, I fulfilled my social interaction for the day. There was one where I trailed off, and then after thinking for a while I was trailing off, I was just like, my brain just went, stop talking. Like, just shut up. You're rambling. Shut up. Don't care. So it's just like, okay, then I just stopped talking. I literally just like, I just ended the conversation. Like, that happens a lot. Apparently, I will literally just end conversations when it's like, okay, but the conversation was over, but okay. And sometimes I think I'm taking way too much time when I'm with another person on like a video call or whatever. So I'm just like, I'll just go as fast as I can. And I do the same thing with podcasts sometimes. It's just like, man, I want to get to the main topic so fast. I'm just going to just go fast. Basically, things that were normal to me were in fact somewhat indicative of some form of neurodivergence. Obviously, I see more high functioning than others. Obviously, what is that supposed to mean? Shut up. But even though I knew there was a distinction between high functioning autism, low functioning autism, whatever, I didn't grasp this. Like, I mean, it's a spectrum after all. I still went, well, not all symptoms affect me, so ergo, I am not autistic. It's like, I don't think that's how it works, but it's like, whatever. Whenever I tell to lie to myself, example, fucking cringe. There was a WikiHow article that literally, it's like the fucking worst thing ever. Where it's just like, man, is it okay to be straight and then have like gay sexual fantasies? And it's just like, it was like, yes, there are a lot of normally straight people who have like very common gay sex fantasies. It's just like, I don't think that's right. But if you're a person that's struggling with their sexuality and you see that, you're going to go like, okay, I guess I'll go with that. Also not helped by the fact that literally I'm just a person. I'm not I'm not a medical scientist. I'm not a person who understands autism or neurodivergence that much, aside from all the stuff that I've researched. So again, take all this with a grain of salt, and I took all the things that I said with a grain of salt, so I'm just like, okay, at most 50-50 chance that I was neurodivergent. Whatever. But then, I think a little bit, I think I was starting to like think about it a little bit, like early last year, but then it wasn't, I think it was last year that I was like, wait, something clicked in my head that I'm just like, wait the fuck up. And sure enough, I looked into a little bit this time, and I'm like, oh wait, the allegations aren't getting beaten. Okay, so here's the story. Okay, so when I first applied to go to elementary school, I had to take a test before entering. Basically, they asked questions, like, can you read this? What is this letter? Etc., whatever. I only remember distinctly failing one part. Like, they don't tell you that you failed, but, like, they just take that. It's not like a test that you pass, fail. They look at the test, and they go, like, okay, so this is what you understand. That's basically what it is. The only one that I remember, like, failing was when they asked me, what is this letter? And I didn't know what the letter was. Spoiler alert, it was a lowercase g. And the reason why I didn't know it was because it wasn't the G that I knew. Like, you know how you draw a G, right? Like a lowercase g. You know how you write it down, right? But then we also understand, like, there's the typewriter one where, like, the font has, like, that fucking weird one. That was the one they showed me. And I didn't know what it was. But whatever. I went to elementary school, whatever. Nothing too out of the ordinary, whatever. But then, something about my schooling experience was a little different from a majority of my classmates. Every so often, I would be pulled into a small classroom/closet with an administrator. They would give me books, pamphlets, whatever. And I would either have to read or listen to something. Then they would point to a picture and then ask me questions about what was just said. This is somewhat vague-ish because it's been so long. But this is basically what I remember. See, it's so vague that I don't even necessarily remember, like, when it really was. I don't remember doing this for kindergarten, and I don't remember doing this for 5th grade. But I can't tell if it ended around the time of 3rd grade or 4th grade. I think it was, like, at most, it was, like, 1st to 4th grade. Like, literally, it would just be, like, I'm doing math, and then they'd be like, excuse me, can you come over here? And then I'd go with them, like, down the hall. I go to, like, this fucking, like, I don't remember if it was, like, an actual classroom or if it was, like, a closet. Because I remember it being, like, a fucking, like, stuffed closet. That's what I remember. Because I only really remember, like, one distinctly in my head. We were doing something about Neil Armstrong. I had to, like, listen to something. And they just, like, point to, like, a fucking, like, a museum. It's like, point to the... I don't fucking remember what it was in depth. If I had the fucking, like, booklets, I would understand. It was like something about Neil Armstrong in a museum or something. I'd do it for like a little bit and then I'd just head back to class as if nothing was different. Like, I didn't know what was going on. No one told me what was going on. I just knew that randomly I was being pulled out of class to do this other thing. Like, nobody else in my class did it except for like one other kid, I think. But, like, again, like, no one told me because I guess this was supposed to be something they told, like, my parents, but, like, spoiler alert, they apparently didn't know this either. I don't know what was going on. I have to ask them again, like, recently, because I have to ask them again, like, later, like, at some point soon, because I genuinely just, like, they either know something, or she either knows something or she doesn't. And it was just so weird, because, like, this is basically how my brain interpreted what was happening. Okay, so we read, we listen. I am Mexican. They must think that I speak Spanish, and then they're trying to, like, teach me English. That's what my brain thought these classes were, and for a good majority of my life, that is what I believed. Because, again, I wasn't told what the fuck they were doing to me. And my brain filled in, okay, I didn't know what the letter G was, and that must mean that they think that I speak Spanish, and that's why they're forcing me to take these English classes. Because, I was a stupid fucking child. I guess I didn't know that the fucking, like, Mexicans used the fucking Romanized alphabet. Or maybe I was big brain, understood that G was pronounced different in Spanish. This makes no sense in retrospect. Like, I mean, I don't understand how I fucking believe this for so long. Like, I mean, maybe understanding, like, knowing that it's not this until, like, fucking, like, at high school, maybe. But it's like, I believed this up till, like, fucking, like, last year, like, 2 years ago. But because it makes no fucking sense. Because in two regards, they spoke to me in English in the class. If they thought I was ESL, would they not have spoke to me in Spanish? The other kid that took these classes, he wasn't Mexican. He was white. He was the kid that was picking on the autistic kid earlier in the episode. And because, again, they just didn't fucking tell me what was going on. Because this is the fucking weirdest thing with the education. Like, especially at that young age. Children don't have rights. They don't have rights. They're just dragged along for the ride, for everything. Like, and this is weird. Like, this is how I remember it ending. I don't think this is right, but this is how I remember it ending. So, one day we were doing one of these classes, and then I explicitly asked the teacher, what am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing here. And then I stopped going to these classes. And again, apparently my mother didn't know, because at the time I brought it up to her, and she's like, what's going on? And I brought it up later in life, like, and she's like, again, she didn't know what was going on. I'm like, I need to ask her again, because it really didn't hit me until, like, recently that I'm just like, wait, were those fucking special ed classes? And then I typed my exact experience in Google, and I got a Reddit post of a person who went through the same thing. And all the comments were just like, yep, those are special ed classes. If any of you understand what those classes were supposed to do, tell me in the comment section below. Maybe I was right initially and they were English classes. I don't fucking know. Like, I didn't necessarily understand the exact type of special ed classes they are, but, like, you know, whatever. And also, I to prepare for this episode, I asked people multiple times, like, hey, do I give off neurodivergent vibes? Short answer, basically everybody was just like, wait, you're not? Like, wow, okay, amazing, wonderful, great. Again, not beating allegations. And many of them, like, just got explicit about it. Like, one of them, like, I didn't even know them that much. They were just like, yeah, I listened to your podcast, and based on your manner of speech, yeah, very obvious. It's just like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Be that as it may, do I necessarily identify as neurodivergent? And that's where things are going to get a bit more complicated. Like, because even though at this point in this episode, it should probably be a bit obvious at this point, I'm still a little bit hesitant to even remotely go like, because a lot of things. Let's just get into it. Like, basically, there are three main reasons, each of which are very long. Again, all written out. All right, so first is the issues regarding self-diagnosis. There's a divide within the autistic and scientific community in regards to the validity of self-diagnosis. Some argue that you need to be clinically diagnosed before you even think of identifying as someone with autism. Others say a self-diagnosis is self-sufficient. Then there's, of course, some people who are like, okay, well, maybe it's like a good indicator, and then maybe you should probably like follow up with like a person who is better equipped to understand this. And this gets into a little bit of an issue regarding self-diagnosis, because many people argue that the act of self-diagnosing yourself with anything like an illness or disorder is a bit cringe, because with one of the big arguments against it is basically like it lessens the people who quote unquote actually have it. Like, there was a user, like a prominent like user on TikTok, who was pretending she had Tourette's syndrome. But to this day, she maintains that she has Tourette's syndrome, despite the fact that she has been repeatedly called out by her family and friends to the fact that she does not have Tourette's syndrome. What if she isn't simply just bold-faced lying, and she actually genuinely believes that she does because of her self-diagnosis? But now, thanks to her negative connotations, people are weary of people with Tourette's syndrome and hold them to higher scrutiny. And what if I do the same thing with people with autism? or any sort of neurodivergence. I guess it's a similar thing to trans issues, like, do you need dysphoria to be trans or not? Or from personal experience, bisexuality, like, what if I'm faking it? What if it's not real? What if this isn't real? It's like, I mean, if you're at that point where you're thinking, like, am I faking it? Or if you're in this point where you're, like, debating with yourself about it, there's a good chance that you aren't faking it. Because if a person was genuinely faking autism, they wouldn't, like, be debating with themselves, like, wait, do I have it? Do I not have it? No, they would just fake it and then just be done. Same way with people who would, like, fake being quote-unquote trans, like, fake being bi or whatever. They just fake it. Like, they wouldn't care. To which you might then go, like, okay, well, if you believe one way on one issue, why wouldn't you believe it on another issue? Now, especially considering there's, like, the thing, like one of the most prominent users on YouTube in BreadTube is Vosh, and he is a self-diagnosed autistic person. And I haven't really seen any, like, major person argue that Vosh doesn't have autism, or that he's faking it or whatever. I haven't seen it. There might be someone, like, because I looked it up on Twitter. Like, they could be saying it in videos and not on Twitter, but, like, I haven't seen that many people arguing that Vosh doesn't have autism. They will just disagree with him. And the next reason is one that I've kind of, like, thought about, and even when I've, like, mentioned it to my mom, like, the possibility that I might have autism, I basically just said a 3-word question. Simply, does it matter? Like, I mean, whether or not I have autism, Asperger's, or, like, any other form of neurodivergence, like, does that really matter at this point in my life? I mean, basically, like, here's what, like, it's I guess it's up to personal preference, but, like, it's hard to, sometimes I perceive it like this, where it's like, if I turn out to actually be autistic, what ends up like, what changes? Like, what functionally changes with me, myself, and I? Well, I have a word I have a label ascribed to me. I am put in a box. Like, knowing whether or not I had autism would have been very useful in an educational sense, because then teachers could understand how to properly educate me and understand me. Maybe it would have made it easier time to, like, understand, like, okay, this is an issue. But, like, the thing is, like, what would change? Fundamentally, what would change? Like, oh, yeah, I have autism. Okay, so what? Like, what would change? But there is one aspect I know that would change, and this is gonna suck, because let's say this tomorrow, I am diagnosed with autism, and then I tell everybody that I know. You know what's gonna happen? You know what's gonna fucking happen? Everyone's gonna automatically treat me completely fucking different. I know that's what's gonna happen. Like, even though it's like, and this is the same thing. Like, whenever you find out anything that isn't perceived to be normal about the person that you know, it's like, wait, like, you're treated differently, even though it's been a part of your identity for a while. Like, for example, if I were to come out to my family and say that I was, even though that's been a part of my identity for, like, let me see, 2023, 2, 1, 0, 19. Like, even though it's been a part of my identity for at least 6 years, they don't know that, or if they do know that, they're really good at fucking hiding it. But, like, they would treat me different, even though nothing has changed from today to tomorrow. Same thing if I was diagnosed with autism, and nothing would change from today to tomorrow, except for how people would treat me. And one of the biggest things that would happen is that I would probably be a bit more infantilized, despite the fact that, again, like, nothing changed. And even if I were, like, on the autism spectrum, like, I would guess I would be on the higher end of the spectrum, I guess. Again, this is based on someone who doesn't have a fucking, like, medical degree on the subject, so I wouldn't know. All I got is the experiences that I have. To me, this is normal. Whether my experience is the experience of a person with autism is irrelevant. This is just how I am. And again, this is all based on if I have it. Because even though I guarantee you that you're all gonna, like, watch, a lot of you are gonna watch this and you're gonna be like, I figured out the answer. Which is like, okay, good for you. Good for you, I guess. There's always going to be that one part that's just like, but what if I don't? But what if I don't have it? What if I do all this? And then the doctor go, yeah, you have autism. You're stupid. You're just stupid. Why'd you waste my fucking time? It's like, geez, sorry I wasted everybody's time doing all this like stuff that a person who actually needed it to like function in life probably could have used. And let's just say I go on like self-diagnosed, like, yep, I self-diagnosed myself with autism, and then I go to the doctor, and then the doctor say, oh no, you actually don't have autism. Like, oh great, I just fucking lied to a ton of people for no reason, which also would that not hurt the community? I guess. I mean, would it? I don't know. I don't fucking know. I mean, again, Vosh self-diagnosed. No one seems to have a problem with that. Dan Harmon self-diagnosed, and no one seems to have a problem with that. I mean, like, one of the most famous YouTubers, Chuck Conroy, who just got canceled, he literally, like a doctor told him he had autism, and then he self-diagnosed himself not autistic. And then he self-diagnosed himself back to being autistic. And then there's another aspect that's a little bit iffy, because again, this might be based on a stereotype, but there's a certain subsection of people in the autistic community, or people with autism, neurodivergence, or whatever, that use their neurodivergence as an excuse for their shitty behavior. It's very common, not just for that, for a lot of people to do a lot of bad things. A lot of people will excuse, like, oh, you see, the reason why I did that was because of this, or the reason why I did that is because of this. When it's like, or you could have just not been a shitty person, like, because I've known people with autism that are not shitty people. I've known people who don't have autism that have been incredibly shitty people. And I've known people with autism who were shitty people. And I've known people who do not have autism. Like, again, you get what I'm saying. Whether or not you have autism does not mean you're automatically a shitty person. And I personally don't want to be the guy that, like, blames every bad thing I do on a disorder or a disability or whatever that I have. It's easy to avoid using it as a crux if you don't know you have it. It's probably why I haven't gotten a depression diagnosis yet. That's basically the average American's medical understanding. If I pretend it's not there, it's not there. I mean, low-key, I wish there was, like, a simple, like, fucking, like, blood test I could do. That way, it's just, like, but no. And in order to do that, wouldn't I have to go through all of those, like, I don't even know the process of being properly diagnosed with autism, because, again, like, this is something that is, like, more useful, again, when you are a child. And the last point is going to be, like, a slightly hot take. It might be a slightly hot take. I don't necessarily know how bad of a hot take it is, but it's basically like a continuation of the whole neurodivergence thing. I think, to a degree, everyone is on the spectrum. Now, basically, this could just range from basically me including people who are quote-unquote neurotypical on the spectrum of autism, which is probably not the best accurate way, but like I believe to an extent that everybody has some form of like a different wavelength. Ultimately, we all only know our own experiences. The experiences of other people, we will not understand 100%. But there are some people who understand it at 90%. There's some people who understand other people's experiences at 0%, who can't understand other people. There's some people who understand at 50%. I think genuinely more people are on the spectrum than we realize, but for many reasons, they refuse to get it. Like, for example, I could have, like, I mean, one of the reasons why is probably because I just never got diagnosed. Like, because I told you before, like, my mom perceived me being said that I'm autistic as an insult, rather than simply thinking, maybe that's something I should look into for my son. And it's like, and proof of this is coming from the fact that autism rates are quote-unquote rising. There are a lot of conservatives who like to make the BS statement like, oh, you see, conveniently, when vaccines entered the scene, all of a sudden, the rates of autism grew. It's like, fuck you. You're just stupid. That is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The reason why autism is quote-unquote rising is because we understand autism now. We understand it better than we have before. Like, back in the day, literally, this is how it was. It was like, this child is normal. And then look at the other child and look, this child is retarded. That was how it worked. But now we understand, like, no, you can't just put every single person with a mental disability in one camp. No, that's not how it works. And you can't even put every single person who has autism in the same camp. It's like a lot of things, like left-handedness, like LGBTQ rights and LGBTQ people, they've always been there, but people have just not noticed they existed until recently. The same reason that trans people are quote-unquote rising nowadays is because we have become more accepting of trans people. Not because there's some sort of secret push to make people more trans, or in the same way there isn't like this big conspiracy to make more people left-handed. It's because we stopped beating children into being right-handed. And much in the same way, when we stop just labeling a bunch of children weird, then maybe we can start understanding, like, autism more. And a lot of this is, like, still relatively new. Like, autism and, like, neurodivergence is, like, very much, like, a newer thing. Like, at least as a literal diagnosis. But the quote-unquote traits have been around for long periods of time. I've seen, like, multiple Reddit stories and other things where it's, like, people are like, oh, yeah, literally, there's this person that I knew when I was a kid. They were, like, an adult man, and they, like, always hung out with their kids. And this person was very clearly on the spectrum. Like, there are a lot of people that are very clearly on the spectrum that we just now realize because people are more understanding of what puts a person on the spectrum. Despite the fact that, again, these terms are a bit more relatively new. Like, autism and Asperger's didn't even really become as truly distinct diagnoses until, like, 1980 and 1994. Back in the old days, if you were low-functioning autistic, then you were just lumped in with everybody else who had a big learning disability. But if you were high-functioning, there's a good chance you could have slipped under the radar. And, again, like, this is going to rely a little bit on a stereotype about people with autism. Trains. What's one of the most common traits on an old TV show? They have an older character who doesn't hang out with any of the other adult characters, but would rather stay at their home and look after a model train set. That's a common trope, and the reason why it's a common trope is because a lot of people who worked on those shows, they had a person in their life that was just like that. And here's an example of one I know, like, I don't know him personally, but like the graveyard in which my father is buried has a grave at the place and it has a picture of one of the person who was buried there. And it's an old man who died in like the 1980s or something, like the 1990s. And he is completely fucking surrounded by mini train sets. You're gonna look at that and you're gonna be like, autism's this new thing that just popped out of nowhere. Fuck off. And with that, I got like one more thing to say before I go. You see the length of this episode. You clearly see that I had a lot to say on this subject. Like, I mean, the script for this is like fucking 8 pages long. And the reason why the page is so, like, the script is so long and why the podcast is so long is because very obviously I had a lot more to say on the subject than I even remotely thought. I mentioned that this is, like, something that I learned this, like, last year, like, the special ed class part, but, like, ever since I learned what autism really was, I have, like, legitimately, like, thought about it over and over and over again, like, am I? Maybe? No. Yes? No. Maybe? No. Not gonna lie, there were some parts of this script that I wrote where I legitimately had, like, tears in my eyes. I don't know, I guess there's obviously something more there than obviously understanding. There's obviously more there. And stuff like that is the reason why I made this episode 301, even though I planned to do a different episode this time. It's because I think this truly helps set the stage for the next part of the journey. If you ever had any, like, ever in the past had any doubts or speculations regarding my potential neurotypicalness or neurodivergence or whatever, hopefully this episode is able to give you some form of answers. Heck, might have given you enough answers that you can probably figure out what I am more than I can. Wish I had your confidence. There's one part of the script that I wrote and then I deleted. I don't necessarily know how I want to describe it, because I didn't know if this was the right feeling. But like, I wrote down and then I deleted that I felt like I definitely feel different saying all this aloud, but I don't know what I feel. I guess that's again because I guess cuz I literally just tried to like do a thing where I would record myself saying my name and that I had autism or something. I just couldn't bring myself to say it. Like, clearly I still got some things to work out. There is one thing I said that I think would give some form of like a clear answer, but I guess really the only thing I really have left to do on this is basically like go to a person who specializes in autism. That's basically the only thing I have to do, I guess, which ain't happening because I don't have money and I don't have insurance, so I guess we'll figure that out at some other point in the future. And I guess I'll say this, because this is something important. No matter where you fall on the spectrum, whether it be high functioning, low functioning, autism, Asperger's, any other form of neurodivergence, hell, even if you don't identify as neurodivergent, but maybe if you identify as neurotypical, like no matter where you fall, just know this: you're not weird or less than anybody else. Even if I don't have the confidence in saying it, maybe this episode helped you figure out something about yourself. So that's where I kind of wrap that up for today. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and click the bell to be notified if a future video of mine comes out. And if you need more content from me, you can go on our website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.